Good day. Welcome to Labi Premium Consult. So today we have a new discussion we want to have, and our discussion for today is what we call ratio and proportion. So we are going to discuss ratio and proportion. Ratio and proportion in mathematics. Ratio and proportion. So before we get into it, we need to have an idea about what is a ratio and what is what? Proportion generally. So when we say a ratio, what is a ratio? A ratio means we want to compare two or more quantity of similar or same kind. Ratio means we want to compare two quantities or items of similar or same kind. Okay, if that is the case, then it means that when we take human beings, you can compare what? Males and females, right? Because they are all human beings. That means what? Here, the comparison of the same kind, human beings, male and female. When we take, for instance, schools, we can compare, like, say, Padoma International School as against, let's say, St. Luke's in the Army, junior high school. That's also what their school, because they are within the same line, school, right? So that means you're comparing items of the same kind or similar what? Kind. For instance, when you also take 2 and 1, we can compare 2 and 1, because 2 is greater than 1, or 1 is less than what? 2. So when it comes to ratios, we are comparing what? Two things of the same or similar kind. So once we have that idea, going forward, ratio also tells us the number of times a number is smaller or greater than what? The other. It tells us the number of times a quantity is smaller or greater than the other. Then we had 2 and 1. We can clearly see that 2 is greater than what? 1. And 1 is smaller than what? 2. That means we have what? A ratio that we are comparing. So the number of times that one item is greater than what? The other. So when it comes to ratios too, in ratios, we can compare part to part. What do I mean by part to part? We can compare part to part, or we can compare part to whole. We can compare part to whole. Either part to part or part to what? Whole. What do I mean by part to part? Let me give you an example. When we say part to part, for instance, if I should take a classroom, remember a classroom consists of what? Males and females. If I should take a classroom consists of students of males and what? Females. Okay, so if that is the case, it means that I can compare what? Male students against what? Female what? Students. So when it happens like that, then it means that we are comparing what? Part to part, because in a class we have one part of the class to be males and another part of the class to be what? Females. So we are comparing males against females. So that means what? Part of a class is male, part of a class is female. So when we compare males against female, then we are doing part to part what? Comparison. So that's what they mean by part to part what? Ratio. Or it can be part to what? A whole. It means that when I take the classroom, for instance, it means I can compare the number of male students to the total number of students in the class, which consists of males and females. I hope you understand that. Yes. So when we say part to the whole, this is why we take some part of the total and then compare to the total. For instance, let's take churches, for instance. If you are to compare church, we can compare one church against the total church that we have in the whole world. That's also part of what? A whole. We can also take, for instance, our currencies, Ghana cedi that we would enjoyed. You and I enjoyed in our various places that we are. If I should take one cedi, I can compare one cedi against the total currency that we have. We have 5 cedis, 10 cedis, 50 cedis, 20 cedis, those ones. So if I should compare one against the total currency that we use in here, that means I'm comparing part to what? Whole. So in ratio, we do this kind of comparison that we need to understand generally. So that is something that we need to know when it comes to what? Ratio and how it goes. So let's also go through how we can write what? Ratio. How to write a ratio. Let's see how it goes when it comes to writing of what? Ratios. So in writing ratio, we have what? 3 ways that we can represent what? Comparison of two or more items of similar or same kind. We have 3 ways of doing that. We have the first one where we use what we call using the column symbol. using the column symbol, okay, which is this. This is a column symbol, okay. When you see one dot on top, one dot on down, we call it what? A column symbol. For example, I can write this as, for example, I can write here as, let's say, 2 colon 3, but we don't call it column, even though it's one way to express two items when we are comparing. One way to do that is what we call column symbol. We call it what? Is to or 2. So we can call this 2 is to what? 3. We can call this 2 is to 3. I hope you understand that. Yes. So that's the first aspect, the column symbol. The second aspect has to do with where we also compare two items, where we can convert the column to what? Fractions. So at any time you see a ratio in a column form, we can also convert that to what? A fraction. So as what? A fraction. As a fraction. As a fraction. So to write this as a fraction means this 2 will be the numerator and the 3 will be the denominator. So it becomes what? 2 over 3. So another way to write a ratio or compare two items is also present them in a form of what? A fraction. So I can write this as what? 2 over 3. Another example, if I have 3 is to 5, I can also write it in fraction as what? 3 over what? 5. So that's one way of also writing what? A ratio. And the other way, or the final way to write a ratio, is to write them in word form. So word form. So to write this in word form, we say that here we can write 2 is to 3, 3 is to 5 as what? 2, 2, 3. This is how you can write in a word form. 2, 2, 3. It means the same thing as comparing what? Two items. Likewise, when it comes to 3 is to 5, you can also write it as what? 3, 2, 5. So these are the various ways we can use or we can follow to write what? A ratio. So let's take note of that.